Hello, good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMar, and you have tuned into For a Green Future. This is a show that is a paid hour. I have purchased this hour from WTOD, so the opinions you're going to hear expressed here are not necessarily those of Cubulus Broadcasting or the station, but in my opinion, they should be. They should be everybody's opinions. And you're going to hear a lot of opinions today because we have a record number of guests coming on for a Green Future today. We actually have 4 guests in addition to our wonderful co-host Rebecca, who'll be calling in after the bottom of the hour. And it's really a great show lined up for you today. So I'm very happy you're here. This is a program where we talk about ecology and the environment. We talk about it in terms of how it affects you, how it affects your family, your health, your wealth, your happiness, and the health and wealth and happiness of your friends and families. And since the start of the COVID crisis, I am once again broadcasting from my living room, and unfortunately, that is a very, very big sacrifice because, usually I go into the studio and then maybe after the show I'll swing by the offices of the staff counselor Muriel just to have a little chat, just to sort of de-stress from doing the show. And I really missed being able to do that and having all those resources at my disposal. So every week I do dress up here. I'm in my suit and tie. Unfortunately, COVID has gone on too long. This whole isolation thing, I've used up my store of cool, nifty ties. I've got a nice tie on, but it's just a regular old tie, and I'm in my suit. Tried to capture that feeling that I'm about to do something great, and I think we really are doing something great this time. As I said, we've got 4 guests coming on. Becca Pollard, Nikki Velamakani, Evan Davis, and Anthony Perrin will all be joining us if we're successful and if we can overcome technical difficulties. And who are these people and why are they calling in? Well, they're calling in from Columbus. That's a hint. And they are all fighting a big project that, if they fail, that will put billions of tons of carbon into the air. And so it's kind of an exciting battle going on down there in Columbus, and one that there's a chance that the environmentalists will win, especially if they've got people like these enthusiastic people that are going to be joining the show about 8:15. In the meantime, before we get to that, I just wanted to talk a little bit. The big news here in our household is solar panels. Yes, as you know, if you're a regular listener to the show, way back in April, we bought some solar panels, bought 6 kilowatts worth of solar power, and it's been sitting in my garage. But this past week, the work has finally begun. The panels, 2/3 of the panels are installed on my garage roof. The remaining third are going to go on racks that are going to be down at the ground level. And they're not connected yet. The wires from the roof panels are just sort of hanging there right now. And the workmen have they're taken off for the 4th of July, naturally enough. So they're going to start back up on, I believe, Tuesday. But it has begun. This is a dream my wife and I have had for the whole 40 years of our relationship, is to get solar power wherever we're living. And it is finally happening. And if you watch on the YouTube version of the show, that I'll post some pictures of the process as they were going up. Went up pretty simple, pretty easy. It's a proven technology now. It's no longer an experimental thing. And it's something basically everybody should be doing, in my opinion. Today's show, after we talk with our wonderful guests, then I'll give you some environmental news that you could use and some kind of amusing environmental news this week having to do with insects. Then we'll talk with Rebecca. And, of course, we'll hear from our wonderful, wonderful sponsors at the bottom of the hour. And then our letter from the future. Yes, my great-great-granddaughter is still writing every day. But, this whole thing about not having any more really cool ties, I was thinking, if you want you could send me a tie, and I'll wear it on the air. I'll put it on next week and describe it on the radio and take a picture of it. And if you want to send me a tie, just send it to Joe at P.O. Box 969, Bowling Green, Ohio. And I will gladly wear your tie. And I'll make the promise I'll wear it no matter how ugly it is. The only time I wouldn't wear it would be if it were obscene somehow. Please don't send me any obscene ties. One other thing I'd like to ask you folks is if you want to call in at 866-240-1065. That's 866-240-1065. This is the best show in Ohio, but it does get better every time you call. And you can call and talk about any sort of environmental issue or environmental topic that you want to talk about. Maybe something you've heard on the show, maybe something you've read in the paper or seen a news story about. We just love to chat with you folks, and we'll drop everything and talk to you anytime you call in at 866-240-1065. Russell, have you got the theme song up yet? Just curiosity. No, I think go ahead and play the theme song. I gotta catch my breath here. So here is our theme song, which we normally open with, but which I hope you enjoy. I don't want no oil, a spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Welcome back, and this is Joe DeMar, and we're going to be going to our guests in just a few short moments. And I just wanted to say one more little thing personally. I wanted to talk a little bit about a fellow named Isaac Asimov. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He was an extremely prolific writer for many years. He was known mostly for science fiction, but he wrote lots of different fictions. And unfortunately, his masterwork was something called the Foundation Trilogy, which is a great piece of fiction. I love it. But in that fiction, he kind of helped establish the cult of the atom. Those of us who are opposed to atomic energy, occasionally you run into a true believer. That is somebody who is essentially religiously connected to nuclear power. They feel it. It's the answer. It's the future. It must happen. They ignore what has actually already happened because of nuclear power. They just toss all that aside. But part of the reason is Isaac Asimov wrote this Foundation Trilogy, which is just coming out on one of the servers, one of those pay services. I'm not sure which one. But that book established the cult of the atom because it equated nuclear power with civilization. They said that as long as there was nukes, there was civilization, and the sign that the first galactic empire was about to collapse was that they started turning away from nuclear power and instead moving towards geothermal power. That was a sign of a decay and collapse. Well, don't you believe it? Isaac Asimov was a very smart guy, but he was wrong about nukes. In this series, he thinks everything should be nuclear powered, from your toothbrushes to your your car, to your to the porch light. Everything had a little nuclear reactor in it. He had no idea of nuclear wastes and the effects that those would have on people in the future. So just whenever you're reading nuclear stuff or fiction, or keep an eye on what the attitude is towards the future from the author, because authors have those biases and they could work them in very sneaky ways. And that's what Isaac Asimov did with the Foundation trilogy. I just wanted to mention that before we get to our guests, because our guests are extremely interested in the future. Hi, have we got everybody on the line? Becca, are you there? Oh, Evan and Anthony? Okay. All right. Evan, are you there?
Yep, I am. Hello.
Hi. And let's see. And also, Anthony, are you there too?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Great. So don't be afraid to speak up, guys. You can get nice and loud. So you folks are down there in Columbus, and you were recently speaking at a hearing. And could you give us an idea of what the controversy is down there? What are you folks fighting? Let's see, Anthony. Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely go first, and then I'll pass it over to Evan. Basically, the controversy is that Ohio State University, the university that Evan and I both attend, has made the decision to try to kind of separate themselves from the Columbus power grid. And to do that, in their infinite wisdom, they have decided to build a gas power plant in the middle of campus, in the middle of our university's campus, that's going to run on predominantly fracked natural gas. And this decision was made with a very kind of unclear, not very transparent decision-making process, and without reference to the student community or the wider Columbus community as well. So in the past couple of months, there's a movement that has developed kind of opposing this power plant. And Evan, I don't know if you want to add anything else up to that.
Yeah, I think that's super important to hammer home that, like, basically no one was told that this was their plan going forward, and that, there's all the internal contradictions of having a power plant run on fracked natural gas be the centerpiece of your supposedly sustainability plan to move towards, like, supposedly zero emissions, even though you're burning natural gas on campus.
Yeah, it seems kind of weird to say you're going to move to carbon-free future by building carbon-based power plants. I forgot to say, Evan and then Anthony, could you tell our listeners who you're with and how you got interested in this controversy?
Yeah. My name's Evan Davies. I'm the treasurer of Our Revolution, which is a grassroots group at OSU and across the country that's spun out of the Bernie Sanders campaign for president. And I heard about this through a number of other members of the organization had been talking about it. And hearing that they plan to build a gas-burning plant right on campus just made me really angry and confused. And so I felt that I really didn't have a choice but to speak up against it at the hearing.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anthony. I'm a third year at Ohio State. I'm majoring in international studies and economics. I'm the head delegate of Ohio State's Model United Nations team and a member of the e-board of the Collegiate Council on World Affairs, which is a student org at Ohio State. I heard about this through kind of student word of mouth. It was being talked about in a lot of different organizations that I was a part of, but that outreach really all originated with Becca, who might be on the show in a bit, and the Sierra Club, who are talking about this, making students aware of it, because the university did not make us aware of it at all.
Now, when you say that OSU wants to get off the grid, I mean, do you mean disconnect completely, or do you mean just sort of have the ability to run as a microgrid on their own if the big grid goes down?
So from what I understand of this, the aim was to be able to power themselves kind of separate from the Greater Columbus power grid, and to be able to have more control over that. And this was kind of proposed, as Evan said, as a sustainability plan, as a plan to lower carbon emissions by building this power plant, which, like you very accurately said, seems like somewhat of an oxymoron, given that it's a gas power plant that's being built.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea of lowering carbon by building a carbon-based power plant. I mean, did they even look at the idea of trying to do, let's say, wind and solar with some storage, or did they, or is the whole process not transparent enough? Did they not give any sort of background or explanation?
That was one of the big points we were sort of fighting over in the hearing, is that the university never even considered renewable energy as an option. And then the Public Utilities Commission, where the hearing was, they expected us as undergraduate students to have done that work and conduct full research into the viability of renewable alternatives, and say that's our job as students, when in reality it is, legally speaking, their job to do that, and they've just completely abandoned any pretense of doing that or trying to help the environment or serve the community.
So this sounds kind of suspect then. If whenever government contracts are awarded without some sort of competition, without due diligence and looking at different possibilities, usually that means there's some stuff going on in the background that might not be on the up and up. So just how, do you have an idea of just how much carbon this plant, if it goes on, if they do this, would go into the air?
Okay. Let me take a look for you and pull up the exact numbers regarding that, and I can definitely get back to you on that.
Okay, and in the meantime, I understand that Becca, are you on the line now?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks so much. Becca, and is Nikki with you?
Yes, Nikki and also Tom Rothgary, both from YDSA.
Okay, hi. Thanks for getting on the line, folks. Could you just, one at a time, just say your name and who you're with, and then we'll ask some more questions.
Good morning. My name is Anaga Valamakani, but most people around OSU know me as Nikki because it's usually easier to pronounce. I am a rising third year at The Ohio State University. I'm also secretary of the Young Democratic Socialists at Ohio State. So a lot of stuff that we do focuses around campus activism and just getting the word around about, we like to do protests about anything we see as infringement on OSU's part, or if certain, speakers come to campus that we don't necessarily agree with and we think they spread hateful speech or stuff. We organize protests for that. We also do a lot of activism alongside Columbus DSA, the Columbus chapter of DSA. They're more citywide organizing, but we really are hoping to do more with them and do more as we can for the city.
Yeah, I'm Becca Pollard. I'm an organizer with the Sierra Club, and I live in Columbus.
And let's see, I think we have one more person not in the line, so we actually got 5 guests. This is a record for For Green Future. Go ahead.
I'm Thomas Rothgary. I'm also with YDSA, although I'm not in a leadership position as Annika is. Pretty much everything that she said pretty much covers what we do. Generally, we try and get out and get to protests and demonstrations and try and do outreach and get as many people out there to make voices heard, because most of the time, as we saw with this gas plant, all of the decisions being made over the summer where there's no students around, a lot of the time people aren't going to know about it unless people are really paying attention and really trying to get the word out. So that is one thing that we try to get. That's one thing we try to be on the ball about.
Right. Evan and Anthony kind of touched on that, the idea that this decision was not transparent. The process that led to this decision was behind closed doors, basically. I mean, is that your experience, Becca and or Nikki and or John?
Well, I think the Ohio Power Siting Board and the university went through the steps that they're required to legally. I think there are just some unique challenges given the times we're in. With there being a global pandemic and an uprising, I think a lot of people weren't getting information through their normal channels that where they would normally be hearing about this. A lot of, because the original hearing was scheduled for April, but it was delayed due to the pandemic, and then it was moved online. And so, I think if it had happened in the spring, it would have been a lot easier for students to hear about it. But with so many people being away over the summer, I think that really presented a new challenge.
Yeah, I think
Agreed.
That's a pretty universal experience in terms of environment and ecology. A lot of things are being pushed through and rushed through with using COVID as an excuse to sort of set the normal democratic processes aside there. You were going to say something, Nikki?
Oh, I agree with what Becca said. Because of the fact that we are in a global pandemic and because of everything that's been going on in the country and around the world, it's very easy to push something like this under the rug. And this isn't just going to be something that affects OSU students, it's going to affect Columbus as a whole. And as we know, Columbus is a city where there are major protests going on to this day, and the media is not talking about it. And I think it was mentioned before that, this plant was said to lower carbon emissions by 35%, when in reality, a natural gas plant actually emits more and more carbon into the air. And for Columbus to commit to clean energy by 2022, this gas plant is actually supposed to be carbon neutral by 2050. So I'm just seeing the disconnect. I'm just trying to understand, how can you commit to this, but then also, try, for OSU to, try to push this, under the rug and, behind everyone's, eyes and be oh, this is fine. We're going to do this. So, yeah.
It seems like it's kind of, in the hearing, it really felt like they were feigning ignorance. I mean, there was all kinds of, they were asking us questions about how to fulfill this or that with other energy sources, how to fulfill heating requirements, how to fulfill, whether or not renewable energy can sustain the energy load that is required. And when you're a grown man sitting on a power siting board and you're asking that question of OSU students, that's your job. So why are we being asked, and only when we're showing up to the hearing? And it seemed very much like, there were also people speaking in favor of the plant who had dubious origins, especially this woman by the name of Patricia Sharkey, who is an attorney from Chicago with no real connection to the state of Ohio or to OSU whatsoever. She founded a law firm that has routinely defended in court, landfills that are now closed and all sorts of places that have skirted environmental regulations. So I was not the one who dug up this information, but I was the one, after I was told about it before my testimony, I pointed it out, and there was obviously there's not going to be recourse right then and there, but I hope, it was understood, who is this woman? Why is she here? And who brought her here? Because she's got no connection to the state, she's got no connection to the school, to the city of Columbus. It felt very much like they knew what they were doing and they were trying to cover their bases in a disingenuous way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this hearing was in front of the Public Utilities Siting Board, is that correct?
The Ohio Power Siting Board, which is part of the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio.
Right. Okay. The Ohio Public Sightings Board. And so they have to make a decision of whether or not to allow OSU to plunk a power plant right down. Now, is this going to be in the middle of the campus, or is it going to be? I know it's going to be in the heart of Columbus, but what sort of factors are they supposed to be looking at? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's on the west side of campus. It's not in some sort of remote area where no one will be impacted. It's in close proximity to campus buildings, to apartments, to a movie theater. So it's in central Columbus. So a place where a lot of people are going to be breathing the air.
Not so much an ag campus down the road.
Yeah,
on West Campus.
It would seem like the only reason to have a siting board is to make sure things like this aren't sited where they're going to impact communities, and it's hard to imagine, hard to imagine more of an impact than putting a plant right in the middle of a city like that. Right,
and it's particularly concerning because the developers are claiming that an analysis of the emissions on the air quality is not required due to OSU's nonprofit status. And so that's pretty alarming for that to be happening, especially during a global pandemic where we know that lung function is really important.
Nonprofits can make any sort of pollution they want? That's their argument?
Yeah. They tried to make an argument that because OSU is a public nonprofit institution, that they don't have to go in depth about any investigation about what kind of pollutants they're going to put into the air. In my testimony, I said basically, are public nonprofit institutions exempt from any investigation about how they're going to affect the very public that they're supposed to serve? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's one of the craziest of many crazy things I've been hearing about this project. As I understand it, that places like this that burn natural gas actually do put microparticles in the air, microsoot that can damage lung function, and you don't want to live next to a smokestack. If you're living in the city of Columbus, you won't be able to avoid it. This is kind of amazing to me. Go on.
The main emissions from a natural gas plant are carbon dioxide, and there are microparticles that go into the air. And basically, there would be more carbon dioxide in the air, and local greenhouse gas emissions would increase.
I could give you a list of the chemicals that will go into the air from that if you'd like. I got it right in front of me.
Sure, rattle them off.
Methane, hydrogen sulfide, toluene, xylene, and benzene. And those have been linked to health degradations such as, hold on, that's a different list. Let me find that real quick. Cancer, damage to the immune system, neurological issues, reproductive issues, developmental issues for children who are near this stuff. Obviously your respiratory system, and then there's et cetera, which we don't really know entirely what all this stuff does, but the things I listed for you are what we know for sure.
It's just amazing. So where is this in the process? You guys have given some testimony. I guess then the siting board makes a decision, and if that's it, is it a done deal, or are there more steps? Are there other places you'd be able to intercede?
Well, there is a public comment period going on right now, so we really encourage people to submit comments to the Power Siting Board, and the Sierra Club actually has a form set up to make that easy for Ohio residents at sc.org/noOSUgas. So if you go to that URL, there's a really easy form you can use, but you can also just submit comments to the Ohio Power Siting Board's website. But there's an evidentiary hearing coming up, I believe, on the 14th, and they may make the decision right after that, but there have been a lot of people calling for a second public hearing since the word really didn't get out to everyone. So we've yet to hear whether they are considering that.
Just crazy. And I read some statements from OSU on their convoluted reasoning on how this is going to reduce carbon emissions. They're saying because American Electric Power gets some of its power from coal, that puts more carbon in the air than natural gas. But two things, of course. I think you touched on one of them, Nikki, is that the true carbon footprint of natural gas is not measured because there's so much methane that leaks into the air during the fracking process that it actually pulls even with coal in terms of total amount of carbon. And two, American Electric Power has committed to decarbonizing its grid. They're building huge solar farms and putting up wind turbines. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, it's, the grid is getting cleaner. That's very clear. Not only is AEP taking steps to make the grid cleaner, but with the city of Columbus making this commitment to renewable energy, we are expecting to see a lot more renewable energy developed locally, and the grid just getting cleaner. So to compare a long-term commitment like this with the grid that exists in 2020, I think it's pretty misleading.
There are also
go ahead.
A lot of other alternatives that OSU could definitely put more into. My understanding is that there is a lot of money going into this. So if there is so much money at stake, why not put it into greener alternatives like solar farms or something? Because other universities with smaller budgets than OSU have been doing that. So why aren't we doing that? There are more people at OSU. There's more money at OSU. Why should we pollute the air even more, especially in a big city like Columbus?
Not to mention that if they're going to use their nonprofit status as an excuse to get away with whatever they want, why is the fiscal element such a huge part of their argument? Which, even that can be picked apart if you want to go that route. But, I mean, most of their argument is it's too expensive for us to do green energy, it's too expensive, what about, our bottom line? When their nonprofit status is what they keep on using. They will pick and choose their position and change it for each situation to suit them, it seems.
Well, and that analysis is just wrong. I mean, in the long run, there's no question both wind and solar are less expensive than natural gas because, you don't have to keep paying fuel costs. They're fuel.
Right.
I mean, yeah. So that is just, the foundation of their argument is incorrect. All right, Evan, Anthony, do you guys want to add anything?
One of the things that I thought was really weird and disconcerting was that at the hearing, I think it was like the director or something of the Sustainability Center at OSU that basically, formulated this whole plan based around natural gas, spoke in favor of the plant, saying that it's gonna reduce carbon emissions by like 35%, and that eventually they're gonna make the natural gas plant renewable by having it run off of like hydrogen burning, which is like an incredibly bizarre statement, because come to learn since then that's not just like sort of a lie from this person who represents the university and this project, but also from everything I've read and heard, basically a scientific impossibility. Because as I understand it takes basically as much energy to burn hydrogen as it does to get it. And so, that's completely bizarre.
Right, hydrogen isn't a source of energy. Hydrogen can just carry energy from one place to another. You have to make it somehow. Oh, wow. Well, good luck, everybody. Thanks for fighting this fight. It sounds like maybe focusing on this fella, the quote-unquote sustainability, the unsustainable sustainability director might be a good tack for you to take. But any parting thoughts?
I would just really encourage people to take some time to watch some of the testimony from the public hearing last week, which is on the Public Utility Commission of Ohio's YouTube page. I think there's some really powerful testimony from community members, many of them OSU students, and I think it really kind of demonstrates that 20 people testified in opposition to the plant and only 2 in favor. So I think that is pretty telling. It's a 3-hour hearing, so you may not want to watch the whole thing, but I do recommend checking out at least some of it. And I do really encourage people to submit comments to the Ohio Power Siting Board and let them know that you want them to reject this proposal.
I'd also recommend 3 hours is a long time, but you can set that video to go faster in the options. I think it would be a good thing to check out not just this testimony, but others on similar processes, because it shows that it isn't really that tough to. The hardest part is probably just working up the gumption to get yourself into a process like that. But I mean, this is the sort of thing that anybody can do. I didn't need any credentials. I just needed to know about it and to register, before a deadline. And then I was allowed to go in there and speak my mind. You can do that at any sort of process like that, whether it's your city hall, whether it's, a utilities board in your state, or whatever you wish.
Alrighty. Great. Well, thank you all so much for coming on, and we'll stay on top of this story. Yeah, you're welcome. And this show airs also on WGRN in Columbus at 5 o'clock on Saturday, so this will be rebroadcast in the city of Columbus also. So thank you so much, everybody. It's been a great interview.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was Anthony, Evan, Nikki, Becca, and I believe Tom came on at the last minute. Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much for listening. And, this is the kind of story that you're probably not going to hear anywhere else around here in Northwest Ohio anyway. But it's an important story because it's an investment in the future. OSU wants to invest in a future full of carbon, and we know that that's not the kind of future you can have. But one thing we can have in the present is some support from our patrons. And For a Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. There are several ways you can reach them, and that is you can call them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. Or you can go to their website, wcparks.org, and you can download their app. Just go to the App Store and search for WC Parks. They've got a nifty app there where you can post pictures from the parks. And, of course, they also have a Facebook page. Again, just search for WC Parks on Facebook. Okay, and, of course, we're also brought to you by our sponsors. And our sponsors are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com, and they searched for a Green Future, and our page popped up, and they signed up to make a small monthly donation. Doesn't hurt at all, comes right out of your checkbook. You don't even have to think about it. And they just signed up at a level they were comfortable for, and it has really helped us keep this show on the air, especially in the times of this time of COVID. It's been very difficult to get people to advertise because a lot of businesses are struggling just to stay afloat. So our patrons have become that much more important. If you want to become a patron, just go to patreon.com. Okay, now we're going on to our Eco News segment, and hopefully we're going to hear from Rebecca soon. But right now I wanted to talk about something really cool that happened back on July 1st. And to understand what happened, we have to talk about an insect that is very popular around here locally in Northwest Ohio, anywhere around the Great Lakes, and those insects are the Mayflies. And mayflies are these critters. They're in the order Ephemeroptera, which is a very fitting name because they are ephemeral sort of insects. In the adult form, they only live for a day, maybe two, and they come out. There's 2,500 species in North America. They're extremely important insect. They are very close to what's called the bottom of the food chain because as nymphs, and they live as nymphs for anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 years, but the average mayfly lives about a year as a nymph. And they eat algae, they eat diatoms, they eat aquatic plants. They live in the water, they have gills, and they eat detritus, which just means random organic junk that they find on the bottom of the rivers and the lakes. And these mayflies, everything eats the mayfly. I mean, literally birds, bats, beetles, squirrels, spiders, fish, everything eats mayflies. And so we really, really have to have mayflies. I mean, the whole ecosystem depends on there being a lot of mayflies around for critters to eat. But once a year, mayflies come out, and they have the strategy of coming out by the millions. They hatch, and they go from this nymph stage to this it's called sub-imago stage, and then that lasts for about a day, and then they become adults, and the adults swarm by the millions upon millions. And if you live somewhere like Port Clinton, or if you live anywhere near the lake, it's very possible your house, your car could be completely coated in millions and millions of mayflies. And so that is interesting enough on its own. So they live, and they live for that one day, and then they have this one night of dancing. They start at dusk and they dance until dark, and that's when they do the mating and the egg laying. And the females, they could either drop their eggs from like 5 feet up, or some species do like dive bombing runs, or some dip their egg deposits, in the water as they fly along. Some just dive into the water and with their eggs, and then that's how they're laid, quote unquote. But this past July 1st did something kind of amazing. They attacked the Fermi II nuclear power plant, and they succeeded in shorting out the switching yard. They were packed in there so tight that they actually cut off the electrical power going into the nuclear plant from the outside. Now, if you're someone who follows the nuclear industry, you know that off-site power cutoff is like the scariest possible thing that can happen to a nuclear power plant. Nuclear power plants, even though they produce power, they're not independent. They are completely dependent on having this off-site power all the time. And every minute you've lost off-site power is a minute that could be a disaster, could be a meltdown. Now, in this case, the emergency generators kicked in, which is good. But they kept running the plant, which is bad. You do not want to be running a nuclear plant dependent on the backup generators, because backup generators have a history of failure. They often break down. Many times there have been incident reports of the NRC. They've done inspections of the backup generators and found things like the fuel was bad, or the contacts were corroded. And, relying on the backup generator is folly. If your backup generator kicks in, the first thing you should be doing is shutting your plant down, because you don't know how long your backup power is going to last. So anyway, the mayflies came in, and it's just kind of amazing that one of the most fragile, one of the most literally ephemeral creatures in the world, in our whole ecosystem, and ecologically speaking, they attacked one of our biggest technological devices, one of our most complex, and they managed to shut it down. They managed to shut off the external power. So 3 cheers for the mayfly. and for all that they do for us, including attacking nuclear power plants, a mass action that involved millions. It was kind of inspiring. That happened on July 1st. We also have on our Eco News and Views a House Bill 104 update. And that update is that the bill has been sent to committee. In fact, it's been sent to the Senate Energy and Public Utilities Committee. So now what has to happen is that the Senate, they have to schedule hearings, public hearings, and people can go and say, don't turn Ohio into a nuclear waste dump. Unfortunately, the members of that committee are all too familiar. They're literally the same people who last year with House Bill 6 stuck Ohioans for $1 billion in charges to supposedly to keep nuclear power and coal power plants running. But as we know, because we followed the story, the utility that pushed this bill, House Bill 6 through, just pocketed $800 million of that $1 billion and took it out of the state to out-of-state investors. So these are very corrupt legislators who love to have the excuse of nuclear power to use that to rip us off in terms of extra charges on our bills. And in this case, in the case of House Bill 104, extra tax dollars being taken directly from our tax dollars and used to support bringing nuclear waste into the state, and to pay. The other thing that House Bill 104 does is it pays insiders and tries to get them to, and gives them a lifetime salary to essentially goof around with nuclear power, to try to build advanced, quote-unquote, advanced reactors, and to come up with new technology to get rid of nuclear waste, which is, and they only have to have bachelor's degrees. It's not like they're actually bringing in people who know what they're doing. They're just giving people, and most of them that they plan to hire are members of a pro-nuclear lobbying group. So they're just literally taking industry lobbyists and giving them jobs from our tax dollars to do something to us that we don't want. So I don't know. So that is the update on House Bill 104, and we are hoping for Rebecca to call in pretty shortly here, but and actually she's trying to call in. I'm getting frantic text messages, so we'll see what happens here. I'm sending her a text message right now, and maybe that'll clear up the problem. Okay, so in the meantime, we are racing right along, and I will go to our letter from the future. So here is the letter. Every week, my great-great-granddaughter, Marie I., who's living in the year 2300, takes time out to send me a letter, and every morning, just as I get up to do the show, there's this flash of photons next to my bed, and poof, there's the letter. So here's this week's letter. Dear GGG, I'm continuing my march south on the Slippery Elm Trail. Every day, I'm able to go a little farther, and I feel a little stronger at the end. I want to try to give you a sense of how different this trail is from your time. I think that the biggest difference is that we accept and celebrate abundance. That is, there are tons of plants and animals and insects that I see every day in numbers that would shock someone from your time. On a typical day's walk, I'll see 30 to 50 wild turkeys, 50 deer, and a dozen bison. At night, I'll hear the howling of packs of 20 or more wolves. I see eagles flying overhead every single day, and every flowering bush is surrounded by a cloud of thousands of bees, mostly the stingless native North American bees, and not the European honeybees of your time. People of your time seem to be afraid of abundance. The few times they were still presented with natural abundance, like the mayfly swarms, it seemed like all they wanted to do was complain about them or ignore them. In the fall and spring in my time, birds are so abundant they actually shade the sun for days at a time during migration. The passenger pigeon and the American chestnut are restored. In fact, every evening I roast a few chestnuts that I picked up along the trail. Yesterday, I took a detour to send a box of chestnuts to Michael. I wish you could be walking along the trail with me, GGG. Sometimes I feel like you are. Anyway, I'll write next week. Love, Marie I. Okay, so that was this week's letter. And did I happen to heir Becca come on the line? That's great. Hi.
I am here. Hello.
Great.
Hi.
So this is Rebecca Wood to distinguish you from Becca Pollard, who we had on earlier. But Rebecca,
That's right.
Thanks for calling.
You're welcome.
All right. So how was your week? What are things like up there in Toledo?
Very hot. Very, very hot. There's been trouble with the air conditioner, so it's not a good time.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk a little bit this week about a lake you were mentioning?
Yeah, it's my mom's hometown of Muskegon. I realized I didn't really do anything for Mother's Day, but it's always a place we went as a family. Really, on the surface of things, it's just a small lake. It's got a little state park, 720 acres. Got, you can fish, you can hike, you can swim, all this stuff. Apparently, it's good for kayaking because it's not big enough for motorboats or jet skis or anything, so, you can do that without being bothered there. But the special thing about Duck Lake, and what always made it sort of magical for us, for me when I was a child, is that it's actually kind of, well, there's no such thing, but there's actually kind of a freshwater lagoon of Lake Michigan, because a lagoon is like a small sort of enclosed portion of salt water, usually that's separated from it can be on the inside of an atoll, or like a little chain of islands, or on the inside of one island, kind of in the shape of a big sea, or it could just be kind of a pond or a lake that's connected to the sea irregularly, like sometimes the channel is there, sometimes it gets washed away, and that's Duck Lake, actually. That was what was so cool about it, is you'd be at the beach at Lake Michigan, and then you'd find this little channel thingy, like a deep stream in the sand, and it was like a free bonus lake right there. And it had a really great feeling to it, because it was like, I love Lake Michigan so much, but it's such a feeling of, you against the elements, and that's what's great about it. But then you get to Duck Lake, and it's just very warm and safe and quiet, and it's a really great contrast, like a break from the main lake.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, Michigan's a very intense lake, right? Well, that's cool.
It is,
like
yeah.
So kind of like Gilligan's Island, I remember, had a lagoon in it that
there you go. Yeah, it's just like
on.
Gilligan's Island, Joe. Just like that. But really, like you could just lie on your back and float in Duck Lake, and don't have to worry about the undertow or anything like that. It's just a really kind of a nice little sun sanctuary there. It's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it. But I always really look forward to. It was a special day when you found Duck Lake.
Ah, nice. Well, so whereabouts in Michigan is that?
It's close to Muskegon and also Whitehall. I think you can access it from either place.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in Muskegon County. 3560 Memorial Drive, I guess.
Okay. All right. Well, it's
how you access
place
it.
To check out. We should probably try to get some funding from the Michigan Tourism Board. For all
we absolutely should. They owe us, damn it. And I might be off Michigan for a while. I might start doing Great American Landmarks or something for the 4th of July for this month or something.
That sounds good. Well, I hear the music in the background, so we're already reached the end of the show.
Oh, no!
Thanks for calling, Rebecca. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you.
This is Joe
Have
Damar,
a good week, everyone. And Rebecca Wood. Bye-bye.
Bye.